You've had two very different and very interesting careers before you became a novelist. What, when did you find time to write to get you to this point?
Yeah, that's always a challenge when you're working on that first manuscript. And every writer seems to have a different story, but they're all about just finding time during weird moments of the day. I've talked to some writers they get up at 4 in the morning. Scott Turow used to write in longhand and spiral notebooks on the L on his way to work in Chicago. For me, mostly it was late at night. I would get everything squared away because you just have to take care of whatever you have to take care of for your day job. And then at night, when my wife would go to sleep, and then later when my daughter went to sleep, that's when you really get the key quiet time. Sometimes that starts at 11 o'clock, midnight, right, for a couple hours. But the key is this, and for anyone who's trying to write a novel, the thing you have to remember is, I've heard all kinds of stories about how writers have gotten that first novel done, but they're all about weird interstitial moments of just finding the time a little bit every day. I, I don't know, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I have never encountered a story where someone says, well, what I did is I took 6 months off from work and I moved into a rustic cabin in the Appalachian wilderness and I wrote the great American novel. I've never heard that. I'm not saying it's impossible. It could be done. Maybe it has been done. But that's not the way it seems to get done most of the time. Most people have busy lives and a lot of responsibilities. You just have to find the time. Flying, I used to travel a lot. For my job, I was a lawyer, and then with the Silicon Valley startup, a lot of trips back and forth across the Pacific. That's great writing time. Bring your laptop. Nobody's going to bug you. The phone can't ring. Don't even have email. So I got a lot done on airplanes. Sometimes during meetings when it was dull, so many meetings are, and I would pretend that I was taking notes, but some idea for the story came to me, and I would just get it down. You got to make it happen. It's about priorities, because the truth is, when people say the phrase, I don't have time for, really what that phrase means is it's not important enough for me too. And that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to be honest with yourself. So if you say, well, I'd like to write, but I don't have time, no, you don't really want to write. You want to do other things more that you do make time for. Maybe those things are watching television, for example. And sorry, it's a run-on answer, but I think maybe this will be useful to anyone who's trying to write that first novel. I'm really not a fan of television. And I love television. I think there are some great shows on TV. I love The Sopranos. I have all the box sets. But I don't have any cable or broadcast. I mean, we have a television set, but it can only be used with a DVD player. There's no television coming into the house. Yeah, so when people say, how did you find time to write, I say, I don't watch television. And sometimes people give me a quizzical look when I say that, but think about it. The way you write a novel is the same way you watch television. Hour or two a day. It could be 15 minutes a day, although nobody watches 15 minutes of television a day. Most people watch a lot. Cut that out and you'll make hours every week, maybe 7, 10, 15 hours a week instead of watching television. Now you can write your novel. Life is a zero-sum game. It's not pretty, but it's true. When you're doing activity X, it necessarily means you're not doing activity Y. So if you really want to write that novel, something else is going to have to go. The first fat I would cut is television. Not that television's not fun. There's a lot of good shows on television. You hear about all these good shows, Survivor and 24 and Mad Men. People say it's a great show. I'm sure these are great shows, and some of them, be selective. Enjoy your favorite shows, whatever. But if you watch television every day, then that's your writing time. So that's my biggest advice. People say, what's your biggest advice to writers? Don't watch television. How are you going to write a book if you're watching television?
Actually, my mom didn't let us watch TV growing up at all. I think we were allowed.
Good for your mom. She sounds like a good mom.
Yeah, I think high school we were allowed 1 hour a week.
Yeah, we grew up with strict limits too. Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time writing. So I think it was really good advice.
Yeah, no doubt.
When did you decide you wanted to write your first novel?
Well, it's almost an embarrassing answer to that question because the short answer is when I was about, I guess I was 29, newly arrived in Tokyo. And I got this idea for, it wasn't even a book at the time, it was a scene. And I didn't even know it was a scene exactly, it was just an image of 2 men following another man down a street in part of the city called Shibuya, a street called Dogenzaka. And it was a vivid image. I wasn't there at the time, I was just on my way to work on the subway. And I started thinking about this image and asking myself questions. Who are these 2 men? Why are they following another man down the street? And then answers started coming to me. I thought, they're assassins. They're going to kill him. And that felt right to me because that's just the sick way my mind works. And it's a kind of Rorschach test, and I didn't do very well. But that's it. If you give me a neutral tableau and ask me what's going on there, I'll come up with something involving action, assassinations, political intrigue, thriller stuff. That's just the way I interpret the world, I guess. So I started, okay, they're assassins, they want to kill him. But then that answer only led to more questions. Okay, but why do they want to kill him? What did he do? Who hired them? Where did they come from? How do you become an assassin? I mean, those are important questions to me because realism is so important to me. So in a lot of books about assassins, the assassin he's just an assassin. You just have to accept that. But I'm very curious about where do these people really come from? We know they exist, and we read about people on the government payroll or people who work for criminal organizations. We know they exist. Where do they come from? What are their formative experiences? How do you get into the business? I mean, you can't just make some business cards up and hang on a shingle, contract killer for hire. It doesn't work that way. So how? I thought a lot about that kind of stuff. The more questions I answered, the more questions presented themselves. Kept writing, and over time, it started to feel like, wow, if this is turning into something deep and complex, if I keep this up, it could actually become a novel. Hey, maybe I could even do this for a living. And that's the embarrassing part, because ever since I've been a little kid, I've loved to read, I've loved to write. I've always been good at writing. Every job I ever had, I became known as the guy to go to if you had writing that needed to be done, a business plan or advertising, marketing, copy, whatever. I became known as that. I wrote a column for the school newspaper when I was in law school. I've just always liked to write. I've always been good at it. And I've always thought that it would be a cool way to make a living by writing. So, oh my God, why did it take me until I was nearly 30 years old to put those obviously closely related concepts together? You like it, you're good at it, you think it would be a good thing to do. Have you considered trying it? Just happened when it happened.
How long did it take from idea in Tokyo to I have a published book?
Yeah.
In a series.
I never know whether this is going to encourage or discourage people, but soup to nuts, 8 years. From the initial idea, that first image I just described, to the first sale of rights, which was a little bit oddly to Sony's Village book imprints in Japan, 8 years. And the takeaway from this, I think, for people who are trying to get published is this. It takes as long as it takes. Don't worry about it. It's a little bit a day. Your job is not to get published. This is the way I look at it. Now, of course, I think this is the right way because it's just, of course it is. It's the way I look at it.
I agree with you.
Thank you
Whatever
for that.
way
Lindsay,
you
a great
say.
interviewer. Your job is not to get published. Your job is to do everything that you can do to make it maximally likely that you'll get published. Because you can't control whether you get published. There's a lot of luck and timing and circumstances that are involved. That's just the way it is. But you can control various elements that will make it more or less likely that you'll get published. Chief among those, finishing the manuscript. So you have to do what you have to do. Just focus on the manuscript. Don't ever put yourself in a position where if you don't get published, your dreams don't come true, it was your fault. That's the only failure in life. That's the way I look at it. The failure is not to get published. There's too much luck and all that kind of stuff is involved with getting published, and many other endeavors too. The failure, the shame would lie in looking back at the end of one's life and saying, what would have happened if I'd finished that manuscript? I wonder if I could have gotten published. That feeling terrifies me. That image, that thought that one day I could look back and say, what would have happened if I had done my job, if I had done the things that I could control? Maybe I would have been able to get published. Who knows? No way, no way. It just gives me the willies just thinking about it. So it's very important, I think, to have the attitude of I'm going to do everything that is within my control, my ability to influence, to make it maximally possible, maximally likely that these other things will happen. You want to reduce your exposure to bad luck, maximize your susceptibility to good luck, and that's your job. That's all you can do. Don't worry about the rest. Don't worry so much about, I'm going to get published, whatever. Just work on what you can control and influence. And then if you get published, congratulations. If you don't, you should be very proud of yourself because you did everything you could. That's all you can do on earth.